First, welcome to Unleash Your Brain Power. This is resetting our art concept branch, the online Agora branch. My name is Bisan Saleh, and I've worked with Jihan for many years, and I've been working with art concept for many years in PR and business development, and it's been quite a journey. For those who don't know Art Concept is a creative space for artists. We offer the best career advice and services. It's a dynamic space where artists can come together. Even art enthusiasts can come to our Art Concept to learn and introduce themselves to new skills. So we're piling up. So Agora is a branch or a project under the Art Concept umbrella. Agora is an ancient Greece is a place. It was the main public space where debates, discussions were held around like social, economic, political, and spiritual matters, as well as it was the center for all artistic and athletic activities. And following this stream of ancient wisdom, where transmitting and sharing knowledge is the most valuable and noble mission of a human being, we wish to offer this open platform and a virtual agora where everyone can present a topic, and we can have transcultural approach to stimulate our discussions and bring in new interest for everyone. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker for the day, Ms. Fawzieh Fifi. She's the Managing Director and Partner of Brainy Nation for Cognitive Training. It is the first and only cognitive brain training center in the Kingdom of Bahrain. Fifi co-founded Brainy Nation in 2023 with the vision of bringing cognitive training awareness to the kingdom and helping hundreds of children and adults struggling with cognitive skills. She is a board-certified behavior analyst with dual master's degrees in developmental psychology and applied behavior analysis. She is a member of the Golden Key Honors Society. She has worked with multitude of individuals with neurodevelopment disabilities ranging from the age of 2 to 22 using applied behavior analysis. She has over 17 years of experience delivering behavioral therapy services in various settings. Fifi is passionate and driven in her work with children, families, educators, and the wider community to help better the lives of children and adults through cognitive training. And I've known Fifi also for a while, and she's a dear friend. So welcome, Fifi, to Agora and to Art Concept. So we leave the mic to you now. And thank you for, at the end of this session, we will have some time for questions. So please mute your speakers now. And if you have any questions, you can write it in the chat and we will get to that at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bisan. I am humbled. I am honestly speechless for this beautiful introduction. I think it makes me feel this little. Thank you so much. Actually, I would like to thank you, Bisan, and I would like to thank Jihan also for this amazing opportunity to be part of this amazing platform for like-minded people that are looking for information that could, even if at one iota, improve our life. And I think this is sort of humbling to be part of this project altogether. I think Bisan has done an amazing job introducing me, so I'm gonna skip that part altogether. And we can dive right in because I think time is valued, and I think that it's very important for us to kind of utilize the time that we have to get to the information that I'd like to share with you today. And my goal is, if each person that is attending here today takes one thing out of our an hour-long talk that could actually make any impact on their life or the life of anybody that they know, then we've won. Then we've accomplished what we are looking for. As you can see, the title of our talk today is Unleash Your Brain Power, Understanding Your Cognitive Skills. I think before we even dive into, I'm not able to slide, here we go. Before we dive into it, I would like to give a little overview of what it is that we're going to discuss. And the topic of the brain and the topic of cognitive skills is one that we could talk for hours and hours about. But today I want to focus on understanding what are cognitive skills and what are the things that we need to understand to get a more cohesive view of what our brain is capable of. Once we look at our cognitive skills, then we also want to look at what it is that we can do to enhance those cognitive skills, whether it's in us or in anybody that we know or our loved ones. And then, of course, the one thing that I really want to talk about toward the end is technology. It's one of the most common questions that I get asked is it really affecting our cognitive skills? Is technology really negatively impacting or positively impacting our cognitive skills? And we'll get into that toward the end as well. Okay, so let's dive right in. I think the term cognitive skills is one that has become a little bit more common now that there's a little bit more awareness of it. And a lot of people are familiar with the concept that basically our cognitive skills are the foundation to everything. They are the foundation to our thinking. They're the foundation to our processing the information that we receive every minute of the day. They're where we store our memories. They're how we solve our problems. They're how we logically think about certain situations that we encounter in everyday life. So those core cognitive skills are the bedrock of everything that is considered thinking. And now we're able to outline those, I mean, there are over 40 plus cognitive skills, but there are certain umbrella cognitive skills where everything sort of falls under. And this slide here shows what we call the learning model. And the learning model is applicable to everybody in life, whether it's an infant or an adult or an elderly. I think one of those things that doesn't really get as much focus as it should is our brain and the health of our brain and those cognitive skills, because although we may care about a lot of other things, whether it's your body, your skin, your health, and going to the gym and eating healthy and buying the latest brands, but really the bottom line is that the most vital organ of our human being is our brain. Because the minute that that starts to give, it doesn't matter how great you look, it doesn't matter what you have and what you drive or how physically fit you are. Once the brain begins to deteriorate, everything kind of goes south. So let's dive right in and let's talk about those cognitive skills, because this is going to be sort of our starting point for the rest of the webinar today. When we receive information is received in all different kinds of ways through our five senses, whether we see it, we hear it, we feel it, we smell it, or we taste it. Information is inputted through those different outlets. And the first line of defense is what we call attention. Attention is our first cognitive skill that basically dictates how all of the information is inputted through our brain. And once we pay attention to that input of information, then we hold it in a part of our brain that's called the working memory. And it's that part of the brain where you hold things short term in order for you to process them or in order for you to do something or execute something that was asked of you. So that's the short term or the working memory. And processing speed is basically how fast we think. How fast do we produce the information that we need to produce? If we look at the left part of the slide, it's called the automatic processes. So these are the areas of the brain where, can you hear me? Am I clear?
Yes.
Yes, very
Okay,
clear.
great. Okay, so automatic processes are those areas of the brain that are imprinted and solidified within the brain network. So for example, if I ask somebody to spell their name, they will spell their name Fawzieh. I can spell my name within an instant because it's part of my automatic processes. I paid attention to the instruction. I processed it really, really fast. I held it in my working memory, and then it's fluidly went to the output area, which is the far right of the slide. And because it's in my knowledge bank, there was no thinking considered. Now, when we learn a new skill, when we are exposed to a new situation where we need to exercise our higher thinking, is where things get a little bit trickier. Usually what I like to do, and I don't have sort of an audience now to talk to, so I'm going to talk to myself here. Let's say I ask you to spell the word Washington backward, okay? Or the word Busaitin backward. It would take you a different set of cognitive skills in order for you to execute the task at hand. So the same input, you got the information, you paid attention to my instructions, you held it in your working memory. Your processing speed is definitely not going to be as fast as spelling your name forward, because now we tap into our higher thinking. Our higher thinking requires you to rely on something called logic and reasoning. Logic and reasoning is that ability that we have to solve problems, our ability to rely on knowledge that we have stored to solve new situations that we've not encountered before. Let's say you're lost in the middle of Shanghai and you need to navigate and you don't have a GPS. You rely on your logic and reasoning and your problem solving skills to get yourself out of the situation that you're in. And then also we have what we called is auditory processing. Auditory processing is our ability to get information that we hear auditorily and process it within the brain in order to make sense of it. So when we're talking about auditory processing, for example, for children that are learning, we talk about their ability to hear the sounds correctly, blend those sounds together, segment them, being able to recognize new words that they've not seen because they're very familiar with particular sounds. So our auditory processing is our ability to take all of this input auditorily and make sense of it. And then, of course, we have our visual processing, which is really the anchor to a lot of things that we see through our eyes. When visual processing is challenged or it's not where it is, then we have difficulty reading charts, looking at a map, being able to solve a puzzle, being able to analyze data that comes to us through visual presentation. So once we analyze information both visually and auditorily, then we have what we call the long-term memory. And this is the space where everything is stored within the brain in order for us to retrieve it down the road when we need it. When all of our cognitive skills are where they should be, based on our age, then the learning process is one that is fluid. This is what we called fluid intelligence. And then when all of this information goes through the fluid intelligence levels, then it gets stored in the knowledge bank. And this is where it's called crystallized intelligence. So when it's crystallized intelligence, we know that it's filed the right way. So if I am a student in a classroom, for example, I've learned something new, I've stored it where it should be, and now it's time for me to recall it. So I can recall it easily. When these cognitive skills are not where they should be, is when we see people having challenges with learning new things. Or most often, you would say that I can't remember, or I can't focus, or I'm not able to pay attention, or my productivity has dropped. I used to be able to do things so much faster. So all of these common terms that we hear are indicators for the health of our cognitive skills. So now that we've discussed sort of what are cognitive skills, it's really important to understand that there's an old myth that basically the brain that you have is the brain that you're born with, and that's it. But in fact, the science now tells us that that's absolutely not correct. A lot of the brain science that's coming out now is telling us the opposite, because when we think about our brain and there's a common saying is that they say a child's brain is like a sponge. And we use that term basically because it really is. It's capable of absorbing so much. It's capable of learning so many new things. And this is what we call now neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. Neurogenesis is basically our brain's ability to grow. Okay, we don't develop new neurons. Our neurons are basically set. However, the synapses and the connections within those neurons are something that we can definitely improve and work on. Neuroplasticity is the idea that our brain is capable of improving, developing, and growing new networks. And we do that through enhanced connections through the synapses within the brain. Our neurons are in constant communication. So areas of the brain that have enhanced communication are ones that are engaged, are ones that are turned on. And in reverse, areas of the brain that are not in constant communication and the synapses are a little bit weaker actually go into what we call hibernation or pruning, brain pruning. So our brain is so brilliant thinking that, oh, you need this part, so let's engage this part, let's kick it into high gear. But this part, she's not using that much. So let's put it to sleep for a little while and not use it. And this is what happens within the brain. So the areas that we engage constantly are areas that are active and areas that are enhanced. And in reverse, the reverse happens for the other areas that are not engaged. So once we understand that concept, we then tap into that potential of our brain. Then we understand that all we've got is a starting point. All we've got is a baseline. Where you go from there, the sky is the limit. Okay, understanding that brain potential is the key to unlocking it. Okay, so now let's go into, are there any questions coming in? Anything that is sort of not clear, Bisan? Or we're good?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we can keep the questions if you want till the end, and everyone is more than welcome to write their questions in the chat, and we'll.
Okay. Great. All right. So now let's move on to what are the things that actually either enhance or deteriorate our brain? Because I mean, it's a double-edged sword. There are natural things that happen within our body that are, as a byproduct of aging. We know that it goes to the skin, it goes to the muscles, it goes to your bones, but it also affects your brain in the same way. So we know scientifically that by the age of 35, barring all other environmental factors, there is a natural decline to our cognitive skills. Okay. In addition to that, our lifestyle plays a major role. The lifestyle that we live has a major impact. And I want to take each and every one of those a little bit separately because each one of those parts of lifestyle have a different impact, both positive and negative. So if we look at nutrition, the food that we put within our body has a direct impact on our cognitive skills. There are foods that are good for improving cognitive skills, and there are foods that are actually reversing the effect of positivity and have a negative effect on our brain. So we know that omega fatty acids and omega-3 and leafy vegetables are ones that have been shown to enhance concentration, enhance memory, and improve overall cognitive abilities. In reverse, we know that refined sugars, excessive carbohydrates, and oily foods or saturated foods and processed and what we eat has a direct impact. In addition, exercise and our active lifestyle has a direct impact on our cognitive skills. Once we exercise, we enhance cognitive skills by improving blood circulation. When the blood circulates faster, it gets those neurons to be active more. And not only that, but it releases a lot of endorphins and a lot of hormones that counter the cortisol effect, which could have a negative effect. So dopamine and endorphins are happy hormones that are induced through exercise that could improve cognitive skills as well. Getting a restful sleep and managing stress also has a huge impact. And it's not the type of sleep where it's by the number of hours. It's actually what we call quality sleep. Through sleep, we know that the brain goes through a regenerative cycle, a cycle where the information that we receive throughout the day kind of goes into the proper filing channels within the brain. Memories are cemented within the brain. So when we say quality sleep, we say going through the full cycle of sleep. And this is why disturbed sleep or sleep that doesn't reach REM levels does not get you to actually reach that qualitative value of sleep. Stress management is also a huge thing that could have a negative impact on cognitive skills. When we are under a lot of stress, our brain goes into what we call fight or flight. Fight or flight is this level or this status where our brain produces a hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is kind of like a toxin to the brain. And it's a toxin that blocks the ability to process information. A lot of times when people are stressed, they'll tell you, I can't think clearly, or I'm not able to solve a certain problem. And it's physically because you're biologically under the spell of what we call cortisol. It blocks your ability to think clearly. It blocks your ability to process the information, or in order for you to engage logic and reasoning to solve problems. So when we're stressed, we're more likely to do stupid things. And it's because our brain cortisol effect. Okay, so this is kind of how lifestyle affects our cognitive skills. And of course, the other factor is environmental factors. So education, mental stimulation, and those are things that we know that we can control in order for us to enhance cognitive skills and improve our cognitive skills. Okay, let's see. So now we're going to dive into strategies of how we enhance our cognitive skills. When we think of our brain, we think of it as a muscle. A muscle can be trained. Let's say you decide tomorrow, I'm going to run the marathon. Then you create a plan and you execute this plan by dedication and hard work. You go to the gym, or the brain is actually the exact same thing. When we think of how much we can train our brain to do so much more than it already is, then we can achieve those goals. Okay, and we do it through mental exercises and challenges. We do it through maintaining an active social life. And the reason why I want to emphasize on social life is that scientifically, just engaging in a reciprocal conversation or a discussion with somebody has such immense impact on our cognitive skills. Remember when we talked about these neurons and these synapses in the brain? Well, solitary life actually has a reverse. Although you might sit there and be mindful and think to yourself and be aware of your being, but it's missing a link that forces your neurons and your synapses to engage in a way outside of your own being. And we only achieve that through social networks and social connections. Adopting a balanced and healthy nutrition and diet, incorporating regular physical activity within our life, prioritizing quality sleep, and managing stress. So those are key things that if we incorporate in our life, we know that we can counter all the negative and damaging effects to cognitive decline. Okay, before we get to technology, I want to actually spend a little bit more time on things that we can do to improve our cognitive skills. Now, it's great to have all these strategies in place, but I always recommend that, okay, yes, you could actually counter the effect of the decline, but if you're somebody that you know you've reached a point that where the decline is already affecting your life, whether it's we call it foggy brain, for example, or you know that a few years ago you used to be able to concentrate and focus, and now 5 minutes into a meeting and your brain is drifting and thinking about something else. Or if you are the kind of person that never needed to write things down and it was always stored in your memory, but now all of a sudden can't even find your car keys, or you're talking on the phone and you're actually looking for your phone at the same time, because I know we've all done that, then there's already, the decline has already happened. So yes, we want to take these kind of casual measures, but casual measures are not always enough to counter, to rebuild, to enhance to a point where it brings you back to where you should be. So preventative versus active. These measures are for preventative, to not continue down the road of the decline, but you need to take active measures if you already know that you're going down that road. Make sense? Okay, so now we can go into the very, very hot topic called technology and the brain. And I think that this is one of those questions that keep coming up, because I think we're in a sirah, we're in a constant battle of, we can't really live without technology. But at the same time, we know that technology has a negative impact. And let's define that a little bit. What is the negative impact? And is there a happy medium? We live in a world where we rely on technology for pretty much everything. If I ask any of you, and I think I might be safe to say that we're all sort of middle age range. If we were to think back when you were a teenager and how many phone numbers you used to remember. Oh my God, I think everybody would say on average, I used to remember maybe 20 phone numbers. Every one of my friends, I used to remember their phone numbers. Now, if I was to ask each and every one of you, how many numbers do you remember? How many phone numbers can you recall? Probably the answer would be like, I barely know I what, 2 or 3? I barely know my own phone. I know mine and my mom's, basically. That's it. And why? Because now we've used technology as a crutch. So if I was to say, okay, I'm going to give you a series of 7 numbers, and in another hour, I'm going to ask you about these numbers. Will you be able to remember them? Most likely no. But if we were to dig back, what's 7 numbers? We used to remember them with no problem. So this is sort of where technology has led us. And it's because, I mean, if we look at evolution, same with human body, same with everything else. Our brain, remember that pruning and neuroplasticity concept, our brain has realized, oh, well, you don't really need to remember so much because you're relying on other things. So now I don't need to engage that part of your cognitive skills so much. So technology is phenomenal. Technology allows us to access information. Technology allows us to understand the world better, allows us to do things a lot faster, allows us to communicate a lot faster. There are so many incredible technology benefits that we cannot forget. However, I think the pendulum has swung really, really far, where now we've become dependent. How many people in the room wake up and the very first minute that they open their eyes, they reach their phone? Guilty. That's me. Okay. There's an article that I read in that your phone notifications are thought of as a pickpocket of your time. They're hijacking your time, because we've now become slaves to that notification. The minute the notification happens, whatever it is, whatever it is. And we just automatically, whatever it is that we are in the moment, ceases to exist. It pauses because now we want to see, because now what is the notification that's come up on the phone, right? So when we talk about the impact of technology on the, and that's just one simple example, we think about the effect of technology on our children and the endless hours that they spend gaming on YouTube, on Netflix, on different things that they do online. And I don't know about you, but when I see my kids basically in this alpha state, you know, kind of like where your mind goes when you're meditating and you're just zoned out. This is how they look like when they're zoned into the TV and you're like, you're calling them, and it's like everything shuts down because our receptive input has been stopped. And this is what technology does. Technology has dwindled our attention span to practically seconds. In fact, when I'm working with my marketing guy, I don't know if he's on today or not, but he tells me any second you go over 15 seconds, you've lost them. Okay, what happened? 15 seconds? We've really boiled down our attention to 15 seconds. So if we've now accepted the fact that this is what the human attention span is, what has happened in schools? What's happened when the teacher talks for 50 minutes ad nauseum, talking? If my attention span as an adult, as a professional is 15 seconds, what am I expecting from my child? So technology is a double-edged sword. We can take what we want from it, but also we've got to keep it in check, because the more we get sucked into technology, the more it takes away from real life. How many times have we walked into a cafe and you see 5, 6 people, young people, everyone is on their phone. And I've done this, I've watched them. And sometimes it's 30 and 40 minutes and not one single interaction happens. Why? Because technology sucked us all. Or they'd be texting each other at the table, you know? So it's important for us to keep it in check. And we could do that by being aware, showing up for our brain. We show up to work. We show up for our body. We show up by going to the gym. We show up to our health by eating healthy. We show up for our kids when we take care of them. Show up to your brain and take a moment to think about all the impacts that are affecting the brain. And what are you going to do about it now? Because if you wait for next week, then it's 1 week later. And all these impacts are happening day in and day out. Okay? So it's a friend and it's a foe at the same time. Just like a lot of things in life, I think. All right. So what can we do? I think this is the main question. I think once you show up for your brain, once you now understand what are these cognitive skills, the next step is sort of understanding your own cognitive skills and where are you. And a lot of the talks that I do and a lot of the consultations that I do, I compare a cognitive assessment or understanding your brain to sort of doing a blood test. Sometimes you have to go and do a blood test, but sometimes there are a lot of people that are good about going and doing their annual mammogram, annual blood test, just to see where their levels are at. Is my cholesterol high? Is my iron low? Is my thyroid acting out? Just understanding where your cognitive skills are is the first step to knowing what you're going to do about it. Because if you don't, then you're not going to do anything about it. Once you know, let's say if you do go to the doctor and you get your blood report and you're looking at it, you have 3 choices. Your first choice is to just ignore it and go on about life and do nothing at all about it. That's one choice. You choose to do that. That's one thing. Second choice is you change your lifestyle. You say, you know what, I'm way above my optimal weight. I need to work on that. I'm going to change my lifestyle. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. Or then, or you go the medication route, for example, and you decide that this is an issue that is beyond my 1, 2, 3. I'm going to actually seek some help and take medication to rectify this issue. But it's a decision made based on knowledge. Once we understand where our cognitive skills are, we've already taken the first step to understanding what we need to do about it. And I know that life beats your body and beats your brain in so many different ways. Stress, work, kids, husbands, wives, partners, nasty boss, gossiping neighbor, all of these things just take these little hammer and keep beating at our brains in different ways. Sometimes stress makes us suffer from insomnia. Sometimes anxiety makes us lose memory. Sometimes being overworked causes cognitive fatigue. And sometimes that cognitive fatigue is really hard to reverse. So I think recognizing your cognitive skills and understanding what your roadmap is to improve or to prevent is a very important decision to be made in life. Okay. And I think that this sort of brings us to the end of our presentation. I wanted to not make it too long because I want to sort of have feedback.
Thank you, Fifi. I think your camera has frozen. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So I think we can open the floor sort of for people to
Yes, everyone
participate,
can.
ask questions. Okay, Bisan, will you
Yeah,
unmute
everyone.
people that have to ask?
هلا Minna will help us with the unmuting. Just check. And you guys can also type in your question in the chat if you want. Is there anyone raising their hand?
Yes. But I think you'll have to.
Yeah. Maya
hello?
has a question on the chat.
Oh,
Sorry. Can you see the question, Fifi?
I could see Maya's question.
Yes. We'll start with that.
Okay, so I think the question here is, let's see. In our modern work environment, we often face numerous distractions that can impact our cognitive abilities. For instance, during meetings, we may find ourselves simultaneously receiving important messages, calls, or notifications. This prompts the question, do these distractions serve as beneficial mental exercises, or do they contribute to stress and negatively affect our cognitive skills? So thank you for your question, Maya. I think that this is sort of one of those areas where, so when we talk about our cognitive skills, I don't know if you remember the first slide where we talked about cognitive, and that's attention. Okay, attention. And I wanted to actually spend a little bit more time on attention, but I kind of moved on a little bit too fast. So I'm going to discuss attention a little bit and discuss the different types of attention, because it's very important for us to have the skill of what we call divided attention. Divided attention is our ability to shift tasks, right? shift from one thing to another and still being able to focus on different things, or multitasking. When we are not able to multitask, our attention just kind of gets stopped halfway through. So there are some people that are able to do that and be able to attend to a meeting and still answer a message, for example. But there are some people that the minute they look at their phone to answer that message, the meeting went. Now, that's not to say that divided attention is, again, it's one of those things that you could definitely train. You can work on developing and improving divided attention. Okay, and this is by training the brain and those parts of the brain that are responsible for divided attention to become more enhanced, to become more engaged. But you're not going to do it in the meeting. In the meeting, you're not actually training your brain to do divided attention. It's either you can or you can't. Those distractions sometimes take us away from what we need to be really focused on. Okay, so being able to exercise divided attention, if it doesn't take away from both sides, then it's a great thing. It definitely is something that is going to engage your brain in a very positive way. But when your divided attention is not where it should be, then you're not actually paying attention here or here. And you end up kind of losing on both ends. Okay, so this example is what we call divided attention. So it could be very stressful if you're pushing yourself to do something that your cognitive skills are not capable of doing. Okay, since we're on the topic of attention, I want to talk about the other two types of attention. And one of them is something we call sustained attention. And this is our ability to stay focused, pay attention for an extended period of time. So for example, now I've been talking for roughly 43 minutes. Okay. Some of you, I can't see faces, I could see only a few, but some of you have probably been very tuned in and paying attention. Your sustained attention carried you through the entire presentation. But if you're a person whose attention span is, let's say, 10 minutes or 12 minutes, then you've been really, really struggling to pay attention for the last 30 or 28 minutes of my presentation, because your sustained attention didn't get you through. And if we're really a byproduct of social media and what the type of attention that we're now vying for, now we're working to 15 seconds. So we're really, really in trouble when we talk about 45-minute presentations. And this is really resonates true to our kids within the classrooms, is that when all they're doing is all day swiping through reels that are literally 15 seconds, and then the teacher is talking for 50 minutes, can't swipe that teacher to make her move any faster. So this is how we're shortening the attention span. We're shortening that sustained attention rather than improving it and making it longer, because as we go through life, we're forced. Life is not reels and shorts and YouTube and social media. You actually have to sit in a meeting with your boss. You have to sit in a presentation. You have to sit in a college classroom and listen to your professor. So those are the things that could have a negative impact. And the third type of attention, and I think is the most common type, is selective attention. And selective attention is being able to focus on something regardless of how many distractions are surrounding you. I don't care if the world is exploding around you, are you able to focus on what you need to focus on? And this is something else that I also explain to parents in consultations, is that when our kids are working within the classroom, we have what's called centers now in the classroom, especially in the early years. So you have a table that's working on their reading. Then you have a table that's working on their science project. Then you have a table that's working on their play that they're putting on next week. And if our child has selective attention issues, well, they are lost. They're not able to focus on whatever is at hand when there's so many distractions around them. But again, it's a muscle. It's a trainable skill that we can work on. Okay, I hope that was a very long-winded answer to your question, but I hope it answers the question. Okay.
We have a question from Ms. Ghada. You can unmute.
Hello.
Hi, Ghada. How are
Hi.
you?
I'm good. How about you?
Very well, thank you.
First of all, I'd like to I'd like to thank you for your great, informative, and I have a question. As far as I know, that if someone is suffering from I didn't sleep well in terms of the number of hours and the quality of sleep. Poor sleep quality and sleeping like for 3 hours, let's say. What I know that even if you sleep well the next day for 7 or 8 hours, your cognitive science and your your cognitive skills and your attention will not go back to normal immediately. I know that if for each hour, for the lack of an hour of sleep, the effect will stay for probably 10 days or 2 weeks. So I would like to know exactly if you or roughly that if we don't sleep for a certain period of time, the impact will stay for how long? Or will it cause permanent damage?
Okay.
I don't know if my question is. Can you hear me? I can't hear you actually.
It was really breaking up, but I think I got the gist of the question. Did everybody hear the question? Bisan? Yeah. Okay, so I think if I understand the question correctly, how do you, when there's lack of sleep or sleep deficiency, where it's pretty much insomnia, how do we counter the long-term effects, which is true. So scientifically speaking, chronic lack of sleep has a direct impact on cognitive skills. We know that for a fact. Okay? So sleep deprivation, because you've reached that point of sleep deprivation, because we talked about the sleep cycle and the need for the sleep cycle prolonged sleep deprivation has a negative impact, has a damaging effect to cognitive skills. However, understanding neuroplasticity of the brain and understanding the brain's ability to regenerate is profound. Okay, I wanna give you an example of a lot of research that's being done on individuals with traumatic brain injury. Okay, now traumatic brain injury most often causes true damage to the brain, like physical damage to cognitive skills. And with enough brain training and with enough positive impact on the brain networks, they've been able to repair that damage. There is nothing when it comes to the brain that we cannot improve and work on when it comes to those cognitive skills. So yes, sleep deprivation and chronic sleep deprivation will have a negative impact, but there are things that we can do, I mean, to counter that effect.
Okay, perfect.
Very important to get some sleep and quality sleep.
Thank you so much. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Fifi, we have some questions on the chat. You can
Okay.
take a look.
All right, let's.
I'll read the question. It's from
Sure.
D3 Consultants. What are good exercises to keep the brain calm and less leading to stress?
Those damaging factors to the brain, because as I described earlier, when we are stressed, our brain goes into that fight or flight stage. Fight or flight means that this is, primitively speaking, this is where your brain thinks that it needs to defend itself, right? So you either retrieve or you go into attack mode. And we do that because of the secretion of the cortisol hormone. And in order for us to counter the cortisol hormone, we have to be very mindful of us achieving that point of stress. So a lot of times what I try to tell people is recognize the red flags, and the red flags in different people is different. And I did a workshop the other day on stress and cognitive skills, and we went around the room and sort of everybody explained what stress feels like to them. One person said that they get really, really hot. One person said that they get really, really cold. One person says that they feel exhausted, while the other person said that they get really, really fidgety. So how our body reacts to stress is very, very individual. So the first step is learn the signs of your body that you're reaching that stressful point, and try to, and this is the behaviorist in me, try to implement antecedent interventions. So try to think of what can I do before I get to that point to kind of pull myself back from the deep end. Because once you've reached that deep end, you've allowed the cortisol to be secreted, you've allowed it to have a negative impact on your cognitive skills, whether it's breathing or removing yourself from a negative toxic environment, or taking yourself to the gym and getting some exercise and releasing some endorphins that we know are going to counter that cortisol. Come up with strategies to not allow the stress, and I know this is really harder done than it's said, but try to find preventative measures to get yourself to not reach that point. Because then when you do reach that point, it's like you've braced yourself, you've gotten yourself to a place where, all right, I'm ready for this, let's do it, you know? So if you're at work, for example, and you know you're going into a very charged meeting with your boss, and you know that it's going to send your stress through the roof, take a few moments before you enter and see how you can be mindful of where your body is at, so that when that slam to
Fifi, I think
think
you're
about, we are emotional, we can't regulate, and we do things that almost all the time we regret. So just learn yourself and your body and what it's telling you, so that you can recognize those moments.
Thank you. There's more questions.
Okay.
We have a question from Faba. When a child has learning disability, would we specifically focus on the area the child is weak in, or should we tap multiple areas to improve his needs overall?
I think it has to be both. So we know from looking at cognitive profiles that a lot of times we rely on our strengths to compensate for our weaknesses. And this goes the same to cognitive skills. So if I know that, let's say my auditory processing is extremely high and my visual processing is extremely low, without knowing, or the other way around, without knowing, I'm going to use one as a crutch for the other. And I think the same goes with our neurodiverse community. So even with kids with disabilities, I would strengthen the things that they are strong in, because this is sort of we're building confidence. we're building abilities that are exceeding others, so this is going to boost them. And it could be the crutch that they need to compensate for the areas that are challenging. And at the same time, of course, focus on the cognitive deficits otherwise. Okay.
We have more questions coming in. Question from Rana. Are there any specific resources or tools you would suggest for further enhancing students' cognitive skills?
Okay. So the best way that we know that is evidence-based is through brain training. However, there are so many things that we could do in our day-to-day life to actually enhance those cognitive skills. And there are a lot of apps that are for enhancing cognitive skills, learning a new skill, tapping into an area that may be challenging, taking on something that you've never done before, even picking up a new habit can enhance cognitive skills, learning a new language. Anything that you do, horse riding, for example, anything that you do that doesn't have a network already created within the brain can create that network. So word search, Sudoku, puzzles, doing things that challenges your brain in ways that
Fifi, I think you're breaking.
okay, now you're back. I can hear you.
Yes, go ahead. So I think the question also maybe where it was towards the teachers, like if there are any like tools that teachers can be useful for the teachers to use with the students. I think this is what I understood from the question.
When it comes to the learning classroom, one of those things that we know is very common is that we go to learn, it's about what we learn rather than how we learn. And the how we learn is when we actually recognize the role of cognitive skills that you need to repeat yourself several times for. When we begin to understand that all of these are indicators of variety of cognitive skills, then we begin to understand what it is that we need to enhance. When you have a child with, let's say, auditory processing difficulties, and you're trying to teach them how to read, and it's just the way that we're doing it is just not syncing. It's just not, there's a missed connection. And this is literally what's happening within the brain, is that there is a missed connection. So we know that their auditory processing is not able to solidify the information that you're giving them in order for them to process it. Then we begin to work on that foundation of auditory processing. So a lot of times when you get kids get to, let's say, third grade or year 4, and they're still not reading, then we know that there's an auditory processing issue that is like a roadblock for them to be able to get the information right, to be able to hear the sounds, whether it's a b or a d or a n or a t, all these sounds that make up the language that they're going to read are not actually coming in. So a lot of times I compare auditory processing difficulties to, I don't know if you remember back in the day when we used to watch cartoons and all of a sudden it's like, wow, 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 you know, like, what is it? Charlie from the Peanuts. And a lot of times when he hears people, it's like, wow, 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 wow. This is exactly what people that have difficulty with auditory processing experience, is that they're hearing, but they're not really hearing. So for a teacher, beginning to recognize that, wait, is this a learning disability or is this a cognitive issue? We can, because it has to be addressed differently. When it's something that you can introduce and reintroduce and reintroduce and still not sinking in, then we know that it's a cognitive issue. Make sense?
Great. And then I think we have more questions. You've answered, I think, Nadine, the practical tips for teachers.
Yes.
You have, yeah. And a question from Ahmed, can cognitive brain exercises prevent dementia or cognitive decline due to aging?
Okay, so the simple answer to this is yes, it can prevent, but no, it cannot reverse. Okay, so when it comes to dementia, dementia is a degenerative situation of the brain, right? So we know that once brain cells have died off, we can't recreate them. They can't reproduce. Okay, so why I say prevention is that when we start to work on our cognitive skills early on, then we cement those networks, sort of pushing back the effects of dementia as much as possible. Because when we enhance cognitive skills to the point where all the different parts of the brain are activated, then we know that even an onset of dementia will not have the same impact as it would on a brain that's already sort of gone into hibernation. So brain activities and brain exercise and brain training has actually shown amazing results with people that are early onset and early detection of dementia and aging in general. So yes, definitely.
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned brain fog and the long-term memory. It resonates so much with me. I do actually suffer from brain fog. So I understand all the steps, all the things you've mentioned and how important they are. My question is basically how can we, help ourselves, overcome this specific brain fog? And if there are any tools or like exercise, as you said, I know like what you said applies to all, but just if we want to bring, the long-term memory and, make it more, just because for me, I don't have any. So how to go forward basically from here? Is there any tools, any exercises, any tips we can use?
So I think, Bisan, you touched on two different points. Okay, so I want to talk about attention first of all. Okay, because I read somewhere that the art of learning is actually the art of attention. Okay, and part of that brain fog is sort of, it's a feeling that you're sort of removed from the situation, right? A lot of times we feel like we're just kind of floating in the presence, but we're not in the presence. And once we train our brain to attend to the moment that we're in, we're combating brain fog. Brain fog often happens because you're fighting your brain that doesn't want to pay attention. Okay. The first step that I would recommend is that maybe select a few moments within the day to really push your brain to be present in the moment. Pay attention to your surrounding, pay attention to your environment, focus on details, get that visual perception to really hone in on some specifics. Okay. Go into a room, for example, and focus on, let's say, 10 things in the room, any room in your house, 10 things in your room, 10 things that you don't normally pay attention to. Okay, go on about your day, and maybe an hour or two later, what were those 10 things that were in the room that I saw? So you're forcing your brain to activate in a way that makes it pay attention to the here and now. Usually brain fog is experienced when we're stressed, when we are overwhelmed, when there's a lot of things that make your physical being not connect with your mental being. So if you push yourself to kind of engage in the here and now, you try to pull yourself out of that foggy situation. And once you train your brain to do that over and over, then you're training it to pull itself out of the fog. Okay. Now, the second thing that you pointed out is memory, okay, which is a very different thing. Memory is the combination of information and emotion. Okay. Why is it that it's embedded in our memory anything that has an emotional connection? If you think back and you think of a memory from when you were a child, you think of a scent, you think of a sound, that's embedded in your long term. That's not going anywhere, right? But a lot of times, things that you ate last week, you just can't remember. Or the name of a person that you just ran into, you can't remember. Because we've not trained our brain to link emotion to it. So things are just kind of passing within our cognitive or within our cognition in and out. We're not anchoring them down with anything emotional. And this is one of those things actually for, the classroom. If we think about how our memory is connected to emotions, and we think about our students that are sitting in a classroom bored, okay? When you're bored, there's lack of emotion. You've actually just kind of disconnected. So how is this going to tap into their memory of anything that they're hearing in the classroom? When you've switched off emotion, there's nothing engaging. In fact, teachers that have highest grades or kids that are super engaged are teachers that link emotion somehow to the information that they're giving. Why? Because this automatically gets stored into your long-term memory. So a teacher that makes you really, really laugh, you're going to remember what they said. A teacher that helps you link whatever information that they're teaching to something that is emotionally connected, you're going to remember the material that they're presenting. And it's the same thing with our memory. I mean, we can't go around linking emotional things to everything that we hear or we want to remember. But if we train our brain to make that link, then you've enhanced that part, and that's your memory.
Thank you.
Sure.
We have, I think, one more. Two questions from Juliana. Regardless of the age, people who are invested more into social media are losing the ability to listen and engage mindfully in casual conversations or social connections. Any tips on how to bring them back? That's a good question.
I think everything should be in moderation in life. Everything should be in moderation. And I think our excessive social media exposure is toxic in many ways. I know a lot of people that are sort of jumping on the bandwagon of a social media detox, for example, or a technology detox. And if we're able to kind of allow our brain to stop relying on not just social media, but technology in general, and engage it in more meaningful yet primitive ways, then this is the key to kind of reigniting that social skill, ability to listen, ability to attend, ability to remember things, and recognizing that when we lose those things, the impact that it has is actually profound. I was talking to somebody the other day who came in asking about memory, because that was his biggest thing, is that what happened to him is that he encountered somebody who was very, very important. And for that moment, he couldn't for the life of him recall that person's name. And not being able to recall that person's name costed him a huge deal at work. Because when we remember people's name, we let them know that they are important. We let them know that they matter. We let them know that we recall who they are. They're significant. And inversely, when you come across somebody and you don't know their name, and it's obvious that you don't remember their name, even though you should, then to that person, they feel insignificant. So those skills that we really we can't let go of, because they dictate the quality of our life in so many ways. So my advice is active measures, sometimes drastic measures even, but has to be done.
We have one more question from Juliana. She's asking about how art can help restore these skills in specific.
Okay, so if you are a person into art, or if you are a person into working out, or if you are a person into doing puzzles, whatever it is that you are engaged in, that you feel fulfilling and you feel kind of restores you to a happier place, it does the same effect on your cognitive skills as well. So if you are doing art and you're enjoying it, then it has that effect on your cognitive skills. If you're doing art and you're like, oh my God, why am I doing this? And this is awful, and you're negative, then even art is not going to have that restorative effect on your cognitive skills. The key is that you find something that is fulfilling, that you feel restores you, and it will in effect restore, or at least positively impact cognitive skills.
Is there any more questions? I think, yeah, I just want to thank you, Fifi, for a very wonderful session and very informative. Really, thank you very much. And I want to thank everyone for joining and tuning in today. And we hope to see you guys again. We're going to do this often. So do follow our Art Concept Bahrain on Instagram, and follow Fifi on Brainy Nation. And she has a lot more to offer for the kids, for the adults. So again, thank you. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, to everybody. Bye.
Bye.